All right, Disruptors, I want to welcome you to the show. I've got a special guest from Montana to LA and now in New Orleans, Casey Boshae. She is the founder of the Gem Pit. It's an e-commerce business. We're going to unpack that a little bit. Also a TEDx speaker. We're going to unpack how that formulated her thoughts for surrounding her business. And we're going to talk about how to transition because Casey exited her corporate world after 4 years after starting the Jump Pit. So Casey's got some practical guidelines on how to get going to exit and the realities of doing that. So Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yul. So happy to be here.
Oh, so real quick, I'm going to ask this question to start with. What is one thing you would have done differently looking back that you think would have made a difference that you would have done from the start that would have changed the trajectory of where you are today?
Yeah. So I think the nature of being an entrepreneur, you are never out of creative, exciting ideas, and especially when
Mhm.
it comes to product-based businesses and starting a business. And so that's great because you need that creativity. That's a little bit of your competitive edge when you're thinking about products and marketing angles and how to serve your audience.
Mhm.
But if you're not careful, that can kind of be a runaway train. And something that I see with a lot of the business owners that I work with is they have so many great ideas for their business and they get spread too thin across those ideas. And I was no different when I first started, in serving the niche and the audience that my business is built around. Um, there was a point where I had so many different SKUs that we were managing for the business, and from just the time and attention and marketing and money that it
Mhm.
takes, I would have really focused from the beginning on one single thing that I could do really, really, really well and dive deep into that and get that going before I expanded out to other products or other ideas. Eventually, I got there, but I think if I would have started from that in the beginning, it would have saved me a lot of stress and overwhelm and money from the get.
That's really good advice, and we're going to come back to that because that's part of the journey, figuring that part out. Who or what are you grateful for that helped you get you where you are today? Because you obviously learned from some folks to get you to where you are.
Oh my gosh. So yes, as an entrepreneur, you're constantly looking for ways to grow and learn. And I had a lot of different resources that I went to for that. But honestly, my friends and family, specifically my girlfriends,
Mhm.
it can be a really lonely experience. It's a mental game being an entrepreneur. You are constantly having to coach yourself and kind of have that internal fortitude to keep going day after day, especially
Mhm.
when things are hard or you're not seeing the results instantly that you want. And so the cheerleading section that you can build around yourself is so important to get
Mhm.
that extra encouragement to keep going when all you want to do is just quit and go get a job at a coffee shop certain days. So I'm
Uh,
really, really grateful for the girlfriends in my life, that have supported me along this journey.
the very first podcast, I know you're getting ready to start your own podcast. I changed the name of my podcast, but so the first, I think, 9 episodes we call it Absolutely Mindset. And I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Julio Malara, and the name of that podcast was Win the Battle of the Mind,
Ugh.
which is what he said. And that's everything you just described.
It is so important. Not unlike professional athletes or, so much of the sport of entrepreneurship is mental. You can have resources to find, the concrete, tangible things, but if you're not internally strong with your mindset, it'll make or break you.
100%. All right. So let's start unpacking your business.
Yep.
And you moved from Montana to LA. You grew up in Montana.
Yes.
Now, what brought you from there to LA? And then obviously got going your career in LA. And you were in the wine business, which is
Yeah.
we have some great ties there. And then you came here and transitioned with your e-commerce business. So let's unpack a little bit about that journey. And then we'll talk about the business. How do you get something like this up and running?
Sure. I grew up in Montana on a dairy farm. My dad was a farmer and was raised there in the country in a very small rural town. But, that's really where I learned a lot of the skill sets that have helped me as an entrepreneur: hard work,
Mhm.
tenacity, discipline, staying consistent day after day, even if you're not seeing the results that you want necessarily.
Mhm.
Um, but graduated high school and went to college in Southern California. That's where my dad's side of the family is originally from, so I had some ties there.
Yeah.
So finished my degree and transitioned into working in the wine business.
Mhm.
And that's where I really got experience working with product-based businesses, managing inventory, looking at pricing, looking at how products really fit in the overall consumer landscape, and how to strategically position your brand for what it is. So
Mhm.
spent a lot of years in that industry and learned a lot. And it was at the tail end of my career in that industry that um, I started, kind of looking around for, all right, what's next? This has been a great career. I work with a lot of amazing people, but I also know that for me and who I am, working for somebody else is never really going to allow me to utilize all of my skill sets and talents that I have in me.
Mhm.
Um, so I started just volunteering in a space that I was interested in, which was animal rescue.
Mhm.
Growing up on a farm, I grew up around animals and rode horses competitively and was in 4-H.
Mhm.
And so in city life, I kind of missed that component. So started volunteering at animal shelters in the LA
Mhm.
area. And that's really when things started to click for me for my business idea, because
Mhm.
it was a segment that I learned and was part of and knew really, really well. And then from there saw a gap in the market for products that I could create to really serve that audience.
And so did you go straight to the Gel Pit, which is the name of your brand? Was that the leap? What was the first product that you brought, or did you bring several products to market?
Yeah, so as I was volunteering in the animal rescue world and I adopted, she was a foster and then ended
Ah.
up adopting my first pit bull, Olive. And through that experience, there's a lot of misinformation in the media around bully breeds,
Mhm.
and I had heard that, but it
Mhm.
wasn't until I adopted her that I really saw, these are just dogs like any other dog. She's amazing. She's a sweet animal. And so I started looking around for products that fit my aesthetic, fit me as a female in an urban environment, but that wanted to support rescue and represent my dog.
Mhm.
So I said, I want a little necklace, or I want something cute and dainty that
Yeah.
represents her, that gives back. At the time, I would Google, I would look, and any of the products I could find at that time made me look like I was part of a biker gang. Bully breed jewelry. There was a lot of spikes involved, a lot of black leather and wrought iron, and that was just not me.
Mhm.
So I thought, I want this product. I know a lot of other women in this world that I bet they would. Why don't I look at making it?
Yeah.
So being in Los Angeles, there's a lot of exposure to different manufacturers. So I found a jeweler
Mhm.
that would make me a prototype. Also a T-shirt. I developed this logo, this LOVE love logo that has
Mhm.
become our signature trademark logo.
Mhm.
And I started making the products that I wanted, but that I couldn't find out on the market. And so we came out with a T-shirt and a necklace and kind of grew from there.
And you're doing this on the side of your career,
Yes.
of your normal career that you've been working on for years.
Yep. Yes, correct.
Oh,
Nights, weekends, early mornings, I would find pockets of time around my day job to grow.
so, okay, so now the process begins as, okay, at some point you're starting to visualize, okay, there may be a point where I can exit my career and go full time in this. And that's where you are today. But that was not a quick or simple or easy path, I would imagine, by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it was not.
Uh,
And I think looking back when I started my business, I was singularly focused in all I want to do is be able to quit my full-time job and work fully in my business.
mhm.
Um, Now I am at that point. That said, looking back though, I am so grateful that that did not happen in year one, in year two, in year three, all of those times that I so desperately wanted to happen, because looking back, there were so many things that I needed to learn and so many things that I actually was learning in my full-time job that
Hmm.
applied to my business, even up until the day that I quit and was able to go full-time
Yeah.
in my business. I was learning things that helped inform me as an entrepreneur. So I am really glad to have that arc and that history, even though, at the time it was a lot of consternation of, I just wish I could quit and go full-time.
So you've got it, and I want to ask the gentle pit. I love the name. I'm assuming that's just because you wanted to take away the spikes and the wrought iron and all those things.
Yeah, I was actually pretty intentional about the name.
Yep.
And this comes back to something that I tell business owners is you need to think long term with your business, be strategic from the get-go. And so for
Hmm.
me, the name was an intentionally wanting people to have to see the word gentle and pitbull conjoined within the same phrase and to start changing those perceptions that had been built over the years that were not necessarily accurate. Because words matter, words can be important. And so for me, it was a strategic name for the business.
And that, so that tees up everything when you talk going forward, because you now you've got your business up and successful, that you were able to leave,
Mhm.
and you're growing your business. We'll talk about where you want to go with that in a moment. But now you're helping. You've spoken to TEDx to your journey,
Yep.
or on on a TEDx stage, I should say, regarding your journey, and you are now coaching people on how to do what you've done. Let's unpack the main things at a high level that you coach people on, to help them start their own e-commerce business, and maybe perhaps even follow your journey to some degree, maybe a different product, but yeah, it's just the principles will be the same.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, you, most people come to me with an idea.
Mhm,
And most of the time, those ideas come from kind of like my journey, an area of interest that they've already been in,
mhm,
and they see an idea for a product that could help people
mhm,
people's lives, solve a problem, right? So that's the first hurdle: is your product really needs to solve a problem. It doesn't necessarily have to be hugely different from other things in the marketplace, but you need
mhm,
to know why it exists and how it's solving the problem of the audience that you want to serve. So that's number one. How is it solving a problem? Number two, it really comes back to starting with the end in mind. You need to know where you're going. You need to know what kind
mhm,
of business you want to build. And that comes back to knowing yourself.
mhm,
For me, and I tell people this all the time, starting or growing my business has been the best personal development journey that I could have ever asked for
mhm,
because you are your business, especially as a solo entrepreneur. You can't go into business ownership thinking, well, I'm terrible at managing money in my personal life, but my business will be fine.
mhm,
Doesn't work like that.
mhm,
So you have to be really self-aware about your own weaknesses and strengths and how that's going to bleed over into the business.
mhm,
So it does take a level of self-awareness, but on top of that, you need to know where you're going. So for example, for me, in the beginning, I was really clear on the fact that I wanted to build a business that would allow me to live anywhere and have
mhm,
flexibility in my day. So what does that mean for the kind of business I build? That means I'm not going to build a business that's reliant on brick and mortar physical locations
mhm.
because that will always keep me tied to a certain place. I
Yeah.
also knew that I wanted to build a team and have employees that could also live from anywhere. So
Mhm,
again, that means I need to be strategic about the kind of business I'm building and that for me was e-commerce because that allows me to work with remote employees who can
mhm,
live the lifestyle that they want
mhm,
and bring their best to the business I'm building. So you have to start with the end in mind so that you don't end up building a business that pigeonholes you into a lifestyle that you're ultimately not happy for because at that point you might as well go work for somebody else and have a steady dependable paycheck.
yes. When you guys started, what did this look like? I mean, what was your days like? You working 9 to 5 or typical work hours, or were you able to integrate that during your workday, or how'd that unfold?
Yeah. So for my full time job, I was managing a sales team across multiple states. I was
Mhm,
working with a distributor who had hundreds of reps that I was responsible for. So
mhm,
it was a large responsibility that, yeah, it was a big chunk of my day, 9 to 5 plus. So for me, that meant
Late
you get
late
up
nights.
early, yeah, 4 or 5 AM sometimes so that I could work on my business before my day job started, and then late nights and weekends. Um, and it first started with just developing my product, getting really clear on my pricing,
Mhm.
learning. I spent so many hours taking Photoshop classes so that I can learn the basics to translate my what was in my head and my ideas to graphic designers.
Mhm.
Um, Seminars, YouTube, podcasts, anything that I could absorb to help me in building out my business in the beginning because I didn't have huge budgets, I didn't have venture capital, I was doing everything on my own. So the more that I could learn, the better it helped me as a business owner.
So we start with the problem. We start with solving the problem, which is the key of any entrepreneur, which I
Yep.
love. Then you're gonna start with the end in mind,
Yep.
and you wanted to know you wanted your time freedom, your flexibility. Then what evolved after that?
Yep. So from there, it was market research.
Uh,
It was, okay, here are the products that I want to develop. What is already out there
mhm,
that I can benchmark against? And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get sidetracked by, oh, look at all the bells and whistles that these other brands have, but you have
mhm,
to know what you're up against. You have to know where your brand fits within the overall landscape so that you
mhm,
know how to position it to stand out.
mhm,
So for me, that looks like, okay, before we came out with our pack leggings, it was what other brands offer products like mine. At that point, there really wasn't anything, but
mhm.
there was similar things that I could go, okay, here's where our pricing's going to fit. Here's where my branding's going to fit. So it was doing that market research to understand what will our consumer spend on? What's our price elasticity? Like, how high can I go to make the most large margin? How much
Mhm.
can I do for discounting and sales in order to drive volume? So it was doing the market research to understand where my brand fit uh, within that world.
So interesting. Okay, so you tapped in another key thing, differentiating. I mean,
Hmm.
the general pit alone. That's why I was kind of asking you about the name
Yep.
because that breaks all the stereotypes and just
Yes.
cuts right through the clutter to somebody looking at pet supplies and or lifestyle to go with your pet. All right, finding the funding. Were you bootstrapping this out of your own salary the whole time, or did you go out and get funding as part of this process?
No funding. I was
Wow.
bootstrapping. I started with. I found and again, going back to what I'm grateful for, the mentors that have helped me along the way. But I found people that were working in the space, in the manufacturing space that I was getting into. So screen printers and jewelers who were hand making our jewelry. And I asked for help. I asked for guidance. I convinced them to allow me to do really tiny product runs initially so that I could test the products I
Mm,
have,
yeah.
which is another key thing that I advise business owners is start as small as you possibly can
Hmm.
and test and test and test until you're really sure that you have something workable and then grow.
Yeah.
So that's how I started small and then expanded out from there.
So, okay, so you got your product, you done your test marketing, you've done this without having to go out, get a loan
Mhm.
and put yourself in debt, which is really, I love this approach. What happens next? At what point did you realize, okay, I've got something? Because you're building this platform and you're
Yeah.
starting to make sales. At what point did you realize, okay, this could become the vision I had to eventually egg is starting to become real? At what point did you realize that?
Yeah, so for the first few years, we were selling products that I just wanted as our own consumer apparel, soft goods, fine jewelry. But a couple of years in, I realized, we need a hero product that's going to appeal to a broader
Right.
audience that's really going to allow us to expand. And this was 2019, 2020, right into the COVID era. And that's when, I was out walking my dog, as you do in an urban environment, wearing a pair of higher end leggings that is from a very popular brand that you pay a lot of money for. And I was still out walking, having to carry everything that you needed for a dog walk in my hands while wearing these expensive leggings. And I
Mm,
thought, there has to be better. There's nothing out there that is solving my problem as a dog owner to allow me to go walk my dog hands free.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I dove into developing your pack leggings.
Mm.
That took me about a year and a half, 2 years to develop. There
Wow.
was some business loans involved to get that going, just to be
Mm-hmm.
transparent. I don't want people to think it's all it's all
Yes.
roses. But when we came out with that product and did our first round of testing with ads,
Mm-hmm.
our first month out with launching that product, we did mid five figures in sales. And that's where I was like, oh,
You
we
got
have
something.
something here. And we
Yeah.
sold out of our first run. And that's when I knew that, this could be really big.
Wow. And where are you today? In the how? I mean, maybe I'm sleep. I know I'm leap frogging some. There's some
Yeah.
critical steps
Yeah.
here because we're going over a number of years. Where are you today with the business, and what's it look like?
Yeah. So at this point, the business is systematized, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is really important because it allows you to kind of maintain a quality of life. I
Mm-hmm.
did bring on a partner earlier this year
Mm-hmm.
who has been such a game changer just in that I am not alone in this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he is more focused on the marketing end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, the business is maintaining we are coming out with products that our audience wants, and so it's kind of just a stable business that allows both of us to live the lifestyle we want. As I branch out more now into helping other business owners build their dream as well.
It. What was the moment you realized? It was after the what do you call the leggings?
The
Leggings.
pack leggings, yeah.
Okay. Uh, at what point were you like, okay, I can make the break from corporate?
Yeah. So that decision was kind of made for me a little bit, and
Okay.
and I'm actually glad for it, and here's why. So I had been working corporate, I'd been building the Gentle Pit at the same time. And in 2021, it was announced that the company that I was working for sold,
Uh,
and we were basically all being laid off.
mm-hmm.
And it was right kind of at that intersection where we'd launched our leggings, hadn't quite done that first month of test ads, but it was just enough of a stable point in the business where I'm like, okay, I think I can make this work, but also I'm being pushed to make this work as well. And I
Yes.
think for me, that was important because as much as you want to take the leap full time, that could be a really scary thing, especially if you're coming from a corporate job that has 401k and benefits and a lot of stability.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think it was important to kind of be pushed into making that leap. And, entrepreneurship, you've heard the saying, it's jumping out of a plane and building your parachute on the way down. And so
Mm-hmm.
that for me really pushed me to be like, okay, we better get the rest of this parachute built. I've got it half going, but it's time to really finish it. And so that was the transition for me in 2021, 2022.
And then you said, okay, I'm gonna pick up and come to New Orleans,
Kind of, yeah.
which enabled, which if that had been a brick and mortar business, you would be still in LA.
I would still be in LA stressed about making rent and overhead and
All those.
yeah, all
Well,
of
that
that.
I get it. So how do you help? Let's just talk about real quick how you help people, and
Mhm.
then we'll see where people can find you, so you can coach them because this is a long journey. People don't
Yeah.
realize that this is a process, and you can help people see things. You can ask. You can draw out the questions that need to be drawn out so they can see the obvious that they don't see. If that
Yes.
makes sense, what I just said.
Yes.
So how do you coach people and what does that process look like? And tell us a little bit about that and we'll figure out where people can find you.
Yeah. So it really depends on where people are at in their journey. I work with people who have ideas for physical products,
Okay.
developing that idea, kind of what we talked about. What does that look like? Where does it fit? And then helping them figure out how to actually get that product made with my network of factories
Hmm.
and graphic designers. So it's that. But then recently, I've also been working with service-based businesses that have already started
Hmm.
to help them put structure and processes in place internally so that they can scale.
Hmm.
Because I've realized throughout this journey, that's kind of one of my core skill sets is de facto COO
Hmm.
coming in and going, okay, you have this business, you've been scrappy in trying to build it to get to a point. Now you're ready to scale, but unless you have really solid systems and stability in place, that gets really hard to do.
Yeah.
So helping them come in and go, okay, what's your system for employees? What's your system for marketing?
Mhm.
Things like that. So it really just depends on where you're at as an owner. But I typically work with people in the early stages of starting their business and scaling in order to set them up for success.
Okay. And what when you when you're starting with somebody brand new, what's the maybe the first thing you're sharing with them so that they can be you can set them up for success. At least mentally, you can set them up for
Yeah.
success.
Where do
What's
you
that?
want to go? You
Yeah.
have to know where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's like getting in the car and going, we're going to have an amazing road trip. Yay. And not knowing your destination, not having a map, not having any supplies with you. Obviously that can shift.
Hmm.
There's always an arc with entrepreneurship and your life in general. So
Yeah.
it's not that that's the end all be all. You can make adjustments along the way, but you need to really start with what kind of business do I want to build?
Mm.
What kind of lifestyle do I want to have? What do I need to live every month with?
Mhm.
You have to start with reverse engineering your business so that you can build something that is fulfilling and
Yeah.
not something that you're waking up going, why did I spend all these years and money building this? I hate my life.
Yeah.
So it's knowing where you want to end up and then how your product solves the problem.
I love it. I love it. Where? How do people? Your call to action. How do people find you to for coaching and the website so they can go buy some more stuff from you?
Yeah. So for the Gentle Pit, we are everywhere under that name, thegentlepit.com. We're on Instagram and TikTok under the Gentle Pit.
Mhm.
So you can find us there and find our shop and our pack leggings there. For me personally, most of my business is word of mouth and referrals, just as I work with clients. So you can always contact me on my Instagram. It's Case Boshae, CASEBOSHAE,
Mhm.
or hit me up at Casey@thegentlepit.com.
Well, Casey, this has been very informative, very helpful. Because you're a grassroots solopreneur who's now building a team, got systems and processes, got a great product line, but that took years, and that's what I want
Yes.
people to hear.
Slow growth, but it's worth it.
Absolutely, with intention and knowing where you're going. That's
Yes.
and you landed in New Orleans. Congratulations for that. Because
Thank you.
all right, folks, I want to encourage you to go visit Casey's websites. Casey, I appreciate you having taking the time with us today, and I wish you continued success. I think there's you got a great journey ahead.
Thank you, Yul. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
you're welcome. All right, bye bye. And that is a wrap with Casey. And by the way, the question I asked at the end, where she answered, you kind of want to know where you want to go. That's important. It is important to know whether you want to be an entrepreneur and what lifestyle do you want to have. And I addressed that for potential franchisees in my brand new book, Your First Franchise. And in this book, at the beginning, you may realize the entrepreneur route might be right for you versus the franchising route or vice versa. So I addressed that in the beginning of this book. With the franchise, you're going to get a playbook. They're going to tell you how to start every aspect of the business. As an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur, you're going to need guidance. That's where Casey comes in. So either route is right. It's just which one is right for you. That's the key. And I help people figure that part out, which the right franchise for them. And that's what this book is about. I'd love to gift you a copy of this book for sticking around to the end. You can grab a copy at yourfirstfranchise.com, yourfirstfranchise.com. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the Close the Deal podcast. Make sure to listen. Make sure to click the bell, hit the 5 stars on the Apple Podcast. All those things, they all help. You're part of our community, and I appreciate you being here. And you know the drill. Be intentional and make today a great day. Bye-bye.